It's time for the North Idaho Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.
That's right. Welcome in. Another edition of the North Idaho Prepcast, breaking down Districts 1 and 2, week in, week out in the state of Idaho. My name is Brandon Baney, our North Idaho resident and expert, Ryan Scaggs. Scaggs, what's going on?
Not much. Just living the dream. Had to get my daily dose of prognostication and read your Bubble Watch article this morning, which was, I know that we will get to, but very well done.
Spoiler alert, the Bubble Watch is kind of a bummer for North Idaho teams. There's a lot of bad news in there for North Idaho team.
But yeah, no, other than that, just living the life, man.
Definitely. Well, yes, the Bubble Watch Part 3, the third and final installation of the Bubble Watch, which again is an exercise in if the playoffs ended today for football, who would be in, who would be out, what would the matchups be? That is on the homepage at IdahoSports.com. And before we get to football, though, let's talk about postseason going on for other sports. State soccer is happening this week. Last night, on IdahoSports.com, we did a live state tournament preview show. Myself and Christian Wiener. We broke down all the brackets, gave players to watch, boys and girls, did it all. If you missed out on the live broadcast, it is available on the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel, Facebook page, and Twitter account. It's also in your podcast feed. So if you are somebody who downloads the North Idaho Prepcast every week on your favorite podcast catcher, it's in there. I put it in there, the state soccer preview. So all your soccer info, you're going to get right there. I will say there's a really good chance we're talking about maybe a couple of state champions, or at least teams that went on very deep state runs. When you look at Sandpoint in boys and girls, Lake City in boys and girls, Coeur d'Alene boys, Coeur d'Alene Charter. There's a lot of good teams representing the North at state soccer. So
it's going to be an exciting weekend for sure. And even up here in North Idaho, hosting the 4As, which is pretty cool too, at a great facility at Real Life. The fields are, weather going to be cooling off this weekend, so Saturday should be interesting. As we're looking like highs, I think below 50, which we're going from. So yesterday it was 75 degrees to 50 degrees this weekend, so a little bit of a temperature shock. But yeah, it'd be on turf, so obviously field conditions aren't really going to be an issue.
Well, I'll tell you right now, if the weather isn't perfect up in North Idaho, we're going to hear about it from everybody else. This is why North Idaho shouldn't host anything. Boo-hoo. Anyways.
Crimea River.
I got to, yeah.
Because that happened. Never clouds or anything else around the state of Idaho, so.
Yeah, exactly. So anyways, all your state soccer action will be on that state soccer preview show. Let's talk about district volleyball though, man, because there's been some interesting developments, especially last night in district volleyball. So again, if you're watching the video version of this podcast, I'm going to share my screen. You can see the brackets on the video, maybe make your screen full size so it's a little easier to see them. If you're listening audio only, don't worry. We've got all the district brackets on the homepage at IdahoSports.com, and you can follow along there. Let's just start with the biggest classification, because that's a done deal already. We've got a district champion in 5A. It is the Post Falls Trojans, the 2 seed. They came in as the preseason favorite. Stumbled a little bit, and not even stumbled, just lost some matches against quality teams. They took on Lake City in the district championship last night and won 3-0 in the sweep. So now you've got Coeur d'Alene and Lake City meeting on Thursday night, with the winner advancing to a state play-in match.
Yeah, and those, obviously Post Falls and Lake City have been kind of back and forth all year. I think that, it's 1A and 1B, looking at just what they've done, especially their non-conference slate. Both teams having a lot of success, and the Trojans coming out on top. I think, it didn't go to chalk, obviously, but I don't think it surprises anyone that the Trojans won the district title. And what a year for Post Fall sports already this fall. So hats off to the Lady Trojans and volleyball headed to state. And I think both these teams, either, if Lake City wins out and beats Coeur d'Alene in the play-in game, I like Lake City's chances in a play-in to find their way into the state tournament as well. But I like Post Falls, finding some hardware at state as well.
Yeah, it's really exciting to see the Trojans get there after being so battle tested throughout the year. And again, the state tournaments will be seeded according to your Max Preps rankings, regular season rankings. Post Falls would be the 3 seed at state, and could move up to the 2 seed depending on what happens with Lake City, because Lake City actually finished ahead of Post Falls in the Max Preps rankings. Lake City was 2, Post Falls was 3, but either way, very good seed setting up for the teams up north, should they get there. Let's talk about 4A. The opening blow was delivered last night, where Sandpoint took on Moscow. Watch this. I'm going to update the bracket in real time. Moscow defeated.
Moscow won.
Yes, 3-0. They swept Sandpoint. So now they get to take on Lakeland on Thursday night. And the winner of this wins the district. So pretty exciting. We still like Lakeland, though.
Yeah, I like Lakeland coming out of the bracket there. And obviously there's a tall task once they get to state with a couple of the top teams there, but certainly could find their way into a placing match for sure.
Yeah, and Lakeland is going to get a bottom seed. If they get to state, you're looking at 7, 8, maybe 6 if some other teams lose out. Moscow pretty much in the same boat there. In fact, they were 8 and 9 in the regular season Max Preps rankings. So a lower seed for whoever wins this district here. Okay, we had Bonners Ferry and Timberlake in a best of 3 series that started on Monday. Who won the first matchup? We don't have it on our bracket. I think we have it in our scores, though. Bonners Ferry, the overwhelming favorite, certainly. They swept the regular season series with Timberlake, and they did win that first matchup 3-0. So they play again tonight. If Bonners Ferry wins, they win the district title.
Badgers, another school having success in fall sports too. So boys football undefeated, soccer's had a great season, and now you're seeing volleyball having a great run as well. I like the Badgers here. I think they come out obviously with the sweep in the regular season. You got to go chalk and ride that wave. I think they could make some noise at the state tournament for sure.
Yeah, certainly. Bonners Ferry, again, if they get to state, they would be a lower end seed, probably 6, 7, 8, something.
But not a team I don't think anybody necessarily wants to see draw on the first or the second round. So
right.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's like a deception that, it's just for the sake of having to schedule the way they do, much like the 4A is playing a ton of 5A teams and racking up a few losses. But I think they're both battle tested. So, I mean, it's, I don't really look at them as they're not your typical 8 seed.
Right. Definitely. Let's look at the 2A Central Idaho League. This was the last district tournament to get started up north. It started on Monday. They had to wait until the matches on Saturday were finished to officially get this bracket put together. It was the one bracket we didn't have on our website on Monday, and boy, did we hear about it. Well, I had to I'm a little salty about that, if you couldn't tell.
Fans that are listening need to calm down.
Yeah, seriously. It's not like I didn't put the bracket up because I said, yeah, screw you guys.
You were in a Twitter space until 12:30 your time Friday night. So cut Brandon some slack.
Yeah, give me a break here. Anyways, this started on Monday. You've got basically 1 versus 2 in the district title match, St. Mary's and Kellogg. On the backside, it's Grangeville and Orofino. Those matchups will take place tonight. 1 bid to state. And St. Mary's is the favorite. Kellogg is certainly capable of pushing them, though, I think.
Sure. And St. Mary's had a great run this year so far. Can they continue? That's a question. I mean, Kellogg, like you said, they're a very capable program and team, and they've got a great lineup. So it'll be, if an upset does take place, I don't think anybody would necessarily be surprised, but I think the Lumberjacks the Lumberjacks have a, I'm thinking Potlatch for a second. The Lumberjacks certainly have their eyes on a state bid here, and hopefully they don't look past Kellogg.
Yeah, St. Mary's still undefeated. They went undefeated in regular season play. What did that do for them in the Max Preps rankings? Should they advance to state? not enough. They would be the 3 seed if State started and the Lumberjacks were there. Melba would be the 1 seed. They also went undefeated, and Ryrie would be the 2 seed. They only had 1 loss. So pretty good company. I think the 2A volleyball tournament is the one that's going to be most wide open, certainly.
For sure. Yeah.
And again, just to rant for a second about Max Preps, this has nothing to do with North Idaho, but in the 2A rankings, Westside was 4, Malad was 5. Malad beat Westside twice in the regular season. How does Westside still get ranked ahead of Malad? How does that happen?
Yeah, there's a lot of that's going on though statewide that I think you can start complaining about too, because we did see that in basketball last year too. So there's it's.
Anyways,
I'm playing the 5th here. So I think we know how that happens, but we don't. Yeah,
no, nobody does.
There's
That's
imaginary
the
bumps
problem.
it doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know if they have to wait extremely heavy on out of conference scheduling. I don't know if that's what's coming into play, but we're seeing it kind of show up here and there. I mean, you can see it in 4A football, which we'll talk about. You've got obviously wins and losses, and you have to schedule up because scheduling makes a huge difference in these Max Preps ratings. So I don't know if that's what it's coming down to. That might be it. So
definitely. All right. Well, that's the 2A. Let's go to 1A D1, where this was the shocker of the night. So we talked about all year long, Genesis Prep was such a strong team. They end up tied with Wallace for the regular season title. Wallace wins the league crown on a tiebreaker. I believe because Wallace beat Genesis Prep in 4 sets and G Prep had to beat Wallace in 5 sets or something like that. It came down to the number of sets won. So Wallace gets the bye. G Prep has to play Lakeside last night, and major props to the Knights. They took G Prep to the wire and won 3-2 and knock out Genesis Prep. What a win for Lakeside.
Yeah, that's a huge win. I mean, an upset I don't think a lot of people necessarily saw because, you look at what happened in the regular season. But, Genesis Prep, the perennial young team that we always talk about. I just, sometimes you just run into it's not your night. And I think that's what no pun intended. But that's what they ran into, it just wasn't their night last night, and Lakeside showed up and, ended up earning the victory. I don't think anything was given away, but kudos to Lakeside.
Yeah, the Coeur d'Alene Press had a great write-up about this. 15-13 was the score in that 5th and final set. Ariana Javier Gore, one of my favorite players, because she's got an awesome name, but she's also a very good basketball player for Lakeside. She had 6 kills, 18 digs. Martina Rivera had 7 kills, 14 assists, 2 aces for Lakeside. So what a win for the Knights. And now, can they do it twice? I don't know. Wallace is tough. It's looking like Wallace now has an easier path to state.
Yeah, I mean, we were looking at the Genesis Prep and Wallace match for district title, but certainly the minors, I don't think they're going to be overlooking Lakeside by any means. Like after what happened last night, can the Knights continue it? Can Magic strike twice and be able to push them to the wire? I think that's going to be the test. If Lakeside can make it tight late. Volleyball is one of those games that it's a game of rhythm, and anything can happen. You get into a 5th set and you're on a roll. Like, confidence plays into it.
Definitely. And I will say that should Wallace get to state, they most certainly will be the 8 seed. They're 11th in the Max Preps regular season rankings, which again, pros and cons to that. And so Wallace would be the 8 seed. Let's check out the White Pine League, District 2. What's going on there? This is nuts, dude. Lewis and Clark State has been hosting the White Pine D1 and D2 tournaments simultaneously. There's like double court action nonstop the whole way. It's been like crazy to try and follow all of this.
It's an awesome facility though. If people statewide haven't seen it, it's such a great facility, kind of tucked away that is unknown in Lewiston. And you throw that in with Lewiston High School's new facility, like there's 2 amazing spots for high school athletics to play. But yeah, go ahead.
No. So You've got, and we've talked about what just a slobber knocker of a conference this has been all year. You've got Troy, the 1 seed, taking on Genesee, the 3 seed. Genesee got Potlatch on Monday night, 3-1. So now you've got Potlatch and Logos meeting on the back end of the bracket. The winner of that will get to challenge the loser of Troy and Genesee. This is all happening tonight. Only 2 bids available. So between Troy, Genesee, Potlatch, and Logos, 2 really good teams are going to be stuck at home.
Yeah, and Logos jumped out to a 1-0 lead on Troy to start that match. And then Troy came back and beat him in straight sets. But, the Logos is capable of playing some quality volleyball. We know what Genesee's been historically in Potlatch. I like Troy to win it outright. But you end up with that Potlatch. If we end up with like a Potlatch Genesee match, it's gonna be a barn burner of a volleyball match for the berth to state. But Potlatch, Logos is gonna say, hey, not so fast, that you got to get through us first. So should be an interesting couple of matches tonight. I like that championship match should be pretty good too, between Genesee and Troy.
Yeah, and I misspoke earlier when I said Wallace would be the 8 seed. Wallace actually is probably going to be like the 6 seed as I look at things, because the District 3 is so not good that the two teams from District 3 will be your 7 and 8 seeds. So Wallace would be 6. As I look at the Max Preps rankings for the regular season, Troy was number 1, Potlatch 2, Genesee 3, Logos 5.
Yeah,
So
I mean it's a shame that only 2 bids come out of this league because it is so extremely strong.
yeah.
And it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I'm kind of, this is the one year I would say that the crossover match, I'm kind of disappointed it's not taking place, and I'm glad that the District 1 team gets their bid locked in. But if you could ever make a case for a crossover for a play-in, this might be the year.
I really got up on that hill last year, so I'll stay on that hill. I do think the District 1 champ deserves to.
Yeah, and I'm with you there. I just think that you look at either of these teams behind them, gosh darn, they're so good too.
I know.
It's yeah.
Well, expanded playoffs. No, we wouldn't.
An extra week. We're gonna get the Southern Idaho folks in on that one.
I don't want to.
Eastern Idaho fans are waiting there, licking their chops. Felt the disturbance in the force.
I don't want to poke that hornet's nest. All right, let's talk about D2. District 1 was last night at North Idaho College. Mullen beats Kootenai 3-0. Mullen will now take on Clark Fork in the championship on Thursday. I think we both like the Wampus Cats here.
Yep. Plus, I just like the mascot.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we talked about last year where Clark Fork won this part of it and then had to go do the play-in game against the District 2 runner-up, and they didn't have their coach. It was kind of an emotional day. The assistant coach had to step in and lead them, and it just didn't work out. And so for Clark Fork, I'm very glad that they had the chance to just earn the district title and earn that state bid outright, because it was weird not seeing them at state last year. They're such a perennial participant. So
yeah, so I like Clark Fork there, and not having to play a Deary or somebody like that, or St. John Bosco certainly helps out this Cat's hopes and get that locked automatic bid.
Definitely. All right, let's talk about, speaking of Deary, Ryan, you called it last week. You said, I would be on the lookout for Deary. They are a tough team. They've got some tall athletes, and it is Deary that has set themselves up for a championship win. Either way, they're going to state. This was the crazy tournament right away. St. John Bosco beats Kendrick, the 1 seed, on Saturday, 3-2. Knocking the Tigers. I mean, just nuts, right? Good for the Patriots. They started so hot at the start of the year and then kind of backslid as the season ended, but what a win for the Patriots. In fact, Kendrick met up with St. John Bosco on the consolation side of the bracket last night and got revenge 3-0. So now it's Kendrick and Deary tomorrow night for the championship. Either way, both teams going to state.
Yeah, and I like the Tigers here. I think Kendrick got their wake-up call. They were, I don't want to say coasting by any means, but it's kind of nice to get that one out of the way. It doesn't hurt you necessarily if you find your way back to the championship match, but it can do, I think, more good than harm by losing that first match and playing the rest of the way through the back end of the bracket. Deary's, solid program too. I said keep your eye on him, and I think they're going to push Kendrick. I wouldn't be surprised if this goes to a tiebreak. But I like the Tigers.
Yeah, if everything works out the way we think it will, Kendrick would be the 5 seed at state. You would have then Deary as the 7 seed and Clark Fork as the 8 is probably how that would end up shaking out for the teams up north. So, and again, it's all based on regular season. Doesn't really matter what happens here. Kendrick will be a higher seed than Deary at state, regardless of what happens. So that's district volleyball. Man, next week we're gonna plan on having a live state volleyball preview show, just like we did with state soccer. We're still hammering out the details on that, so stay tuned for that. Okay, now let's get to football, Ryan, where, well, a lot of teams up north have to win this week. There's not very many at-large bids available for the teams up north. I guess we'll start with the obvious in 5A, where it's a game we're going to have Friday night on IdahoSports.com. Coeur d'Alene at Lewiston. Both teams have to win to get in. There's no path to an at-large bid for either one of these teams.
No, that's going to be the automatic on this. There's not going to be 3 teams out of the north. I don't see there being any realistic path to that taking place. Just based on, even if Lewiston say they slip, yeah, they've got a good record, but at the same time, it goes to scheduling, and you didn't schedule enough 5A size schools and get those victories to boost that max preps rating to get that extra bid in. But it's I like the Bengals. As good as I say this too, and I've done a couple Coeur d'Alene games, and they're always like kind of an ugly game. And I kept wondering, I'm like, why is this game so ugly? And then I look at the stat sheet and I kind of go back through and watch things. And it's like, it's because their defense is really stinking good. And they make really good offenses look marginal. And so I think Coeur d'Alene's defense, we talked about it pregame last week, kind of one of our keys. Can Coeur d'Alene get a takeaway points? Because they've done it, I think, in 3 straight ball games. They've been able to get points off turnovers. And so sure enough, right before halftime, they get a strip, and Colton Farrar takes it back to the 8-yard line. Coeur d'Alene couldn't convert on the touchdown try right before the half. What some could have said was a questionable strip and run, but nonetheless, Farrar got 88 yards on a fumble recovery or a strip, and couldn't get points off of it though. And I think that that was the difference in the game, is that we saw Coeur d'Alene not able to convert there. It would have made it a 1-possession game at half. Or actually would have. I'm trying to remember the halftime. So it would have been close. I think it was a 2-point game at that point if they would have gotten a touchdown. But yeah, it's just one of those interesting games, and so coming into Friday night, I like the Bengals. I think they're too balanced on offense. Their running game is really good. We've seen Coeur d'Alene struggle with really good running backs because Bustamante ran all over him on Friday night. Lakeland ran all over him earlier in the year. Rigby ran all over him. So if there's an Achilles heel there, it's a good, solid running game that they just struggle with. And Lewiston can run not just with the running backs, with the QB and their slot receivers. And they bring in Ricard in there a little bit too, that he can run. The backup quarterback comes in. I mean, you could put White in the backfield. They run with him a little bit. So, yeah, I like the Bengals. I think they're just too multiple that Coeur d'Alene's not going to have the answer. If they're going to lack in the passing game, which Coeur d'Alene's back into that defense is insane. I like Lewiston's offensive line in that running game.
I agree. I think the defenses are pretty similar. Really good strength up front for both teams. And I agree. The one Achilles heel for Coeur d'Alene this year has been rushing attacks. It's been a problem for them, and Lewiston, I think, has figured it out that, hey, Jackson Lathan's pretty good. We should try to get him the ball as much as we can.
Bum ankle, and you're going for $190.
Yeah, like I said, the only Lewiston game I got to do was all the way back at the start of the year with the Rocky Mountain Rumble, and I said it at the time. I said I don't think they gave Jackson Lathan the ball enough, because he's such a dynamic player, and they've obviously given him more and more and more as the season's gone along, and look out. So let me ask you, before we get to the other playoff scenarios, about this scheduling problem that's occurring in 5A football only, because 5A is one of only 2 classifications that doesn't use max preps rankings at all. It's all determined on at-large bids. your winning percentage against 5A schools or out-of-state opponents with 5A enrollments.
Yep.
It brings up two different ways you can schedule. Let's start with the Coeur d'Alene side of it, because the Vikings loaded up with 5A teams. They ran through a gauntlet. They played Rigby. They played Rocky Mountain. They played Union High out of Washington, and they didn't win any of those games, though. They went 1-5 against 5A opponents this year. If they lose on Friday night, they will have gone 1-5 against 5A opponents. They scheduled the best of the best, and it didn't work out, right? It was a gamble that they took, because it's great to schedule those tough teams, but you have to win some of those games. So let me ask you, is it better to schedule a weaker team from Boise? Like we saw Lewiston beat Capital. We saw Post Falls smoke Timberline. Yeah. Is that the way to go, just to get an easy 5A win? Coach Amos, I know, would hate doing that, because he wants to challenge his team. But now when you look at what happened here, is that the formula moving forward?
I think so. Or, we might see him just start bringing the Spokane schools back on the schedule, playing like a Ferris or Lewis and Clark, playing some of the bigger Spokane teams.
A lower end GSL team, right?
Yeah. Yes. Because, look at what Post Falls did, though. They threw Mount Spokane on their schedule. They are Mount Spokane's only loss. Mount Spokane is going and playing Gonzaga Prep this weekend. Both teams going into that game 6-1. And those are two of the powerhouses in the state of Washington. So Post Falls didn't necessarily schedule down. They scheduled up, and they won a tough game, close. I think it was like 19-13 or something like that they beat the Wildcats. But yeah, I see. It's not Coach Amos. And there's a lot of them out there probably draw from, if you wanted to cherry pick from like the Tri-Cities in Washington, or some more from the West Side and like doing home and home series and stuff like that. Or if you wanted to play like the Timberlines and, those of the world. But I don't think that's Coach Amos's thing. And that's, I think the kids like playing the tougher opponents, but at the same time, playoff bids matter. And if you've got a good program, you got to find your way there. Maybe they throw out, I look at it, where it used to be back in the day, you'd throw Appalachian State on your schedule. Not so much anymore, obviously, if you're Texas A&M. But no, you throw like a mid-major on your schedule, and maybe we start seeing some of those. I don't know. I think the Vikings might pick one or two up now. I think we're going to start seeing Lewiston do away from some of the regional matchups too, that they're going to schedule. They historically haven't played a Spokane school. They just never do. But I think we might start seeing that.
Yeah, we'll get to Lewiston in a second. The last piece I wanted to bring up is this. So we've talked about this combined IEL 5A, 4A, where Coeur d'Alene played Sandpoint and Lakeland this year and got two really good games, two very good tests that made their team better. Mm-hmm. But those games ultimately worthless. Again, I've said this combined league thing has got to go away. We tried it. It to me, it's not working.
And they didn't play the full slate. Like Coeur d'Alene didn't play Moscow, obviously. Lewiston didn't play Lakeland. Lake City played all three teams from the 4As, but it's like Post Falls didn't play Sandpoint. They didn't play Moscow either. They did play Lakeland, and that's Sandpoint, one of the marquee losses for the Trojans. I just look at that and I'm like still scratching my head over that one after what I saw on Friday night. But yeah, I think we've got to do away. There's got to be a schedule change. We're going to see it in the next couple of years. I think we're going to see a significant shift, especially from the north, that more teams are willing to travel now. I think we're going to start seeing it. Used to be back in the day, like Lewiston played, they played in that District 3. Like I remember in high school, Lewiston had to play Capital and Centennial and Bora and everybody like week after week after week, just because there was no teams in the north. And now that the enrollments have balanced and everything, I think we're going to see a seismic shift.
I think so. I think there's got to be a change there. So, okay, let's talk about Lewiston. You mentioned they've had these long-standing geographic rivalries with Moscow and Clarkston, and like they played Pendleton, Oregon this year. Well, Pendleton didn't qualify for the enrollment number that's needed to be considered 5A. So does Lewiston, I hate to say it, but does the rivalry with Clarkston go away? Does the rivalry with Moscow go away until because until the schedule, if 5A continues the way it does, with 5A winning percentage being the only or the number one criteria used, it's going to favor the Boise schools. It just is, because there's so many of those teams down there that they play an entire slate of 5A opponents.
You know, the Clarkson game, I see it never leaving. They've played each other 119 times, I think, or 120 times. There's been meetings between those schools. That one, they tried to kill that when Clarkston went to the Greater Spokane League. They tried to do away with it, and, you know, they got it to stay. I don't think that one's going. I don't think Lewiston's going to play the Moscows. I don't think they're going to play the Pendleton. They can't afford those games anymore. They're going to have to schedule up and play the bigger schools, because if they get snake bit Friday night, they're going to have to go back and what do they look at? They're going to have to look at their schedule, and that's where blame's going to lie. Is that, you know, they did go down to Rocky Mountain Rumble and play down there. You're going to have. They had Capital come up here. They're going to have more of those games. They used to play like Anna schools. They used to like Nolan, Helena Capital, and some of those teams, you know, and they've done away with some of those historic games that they had played in the past. You know, might see them show back up on the schedule. I don't know. You might see Flathead or Glacier or some of those schools show up too. But they're going to have to do something.
Yeah, I'll say we lost you for a second there, but you were talking about the Montana schools that would qualify for a 5A. So then Montana, it's AA. That's what would be equivalent to 5A here. And you used to see, right, Coeur d'Alene would play like Hellgate all the time from Missoula because Hellgate sucks and it's a nice win for them. And but the way it's working in Montana now is that AA classification has gotten bigger as more people are moving out of the rural areas and flocking to the big cities in Montana. The number of AA schools has increased to the point where their schedules are pretty much full with league. Like, you're looking at 8-team leagues on both sides with 7 conference games, and that leaves 1 non-conference state. And a lot of times they're playing somebody from the other division. So the Montana schools, I think, are out for now. So it's going to have to be Washington and Oregon.
You know, the thing too that I look at is that maybe the state changes that rule and they include 4A, because Eastern Idaho can start making that argument too about having to play some of the 4A schools. I think that they're not. I mean, you even see it down in Boise. That, like, you've got, you know, some of the 4A schools playing, like BK is playing some of the 5A teams. You know, you're going to keep penalizing teams for scheduling good opponents, like Lewiston playing Sandpoint, Coeur d'Alene playing Sandpoint. Like, you don't want to keep screwing these teams over for not necessarily scheduling cupcakes. They're just bringing in teams that are geographically close. So I'd see that rule might get tweaked before, like, you see necessarily nuking a schedule and going straight 5 teams from another state.
I don't know that the rule will change. And here's, you know, we're ready for some real talk here, and this will upset people in Boise, but that, you know, I don't know that
Columbia playing all 5 of the 5A, you know. Yeah.
I mean, to impact a rule change, you have to get a majority of the schools to vote on the change, right? And where in 5A football, where is the majority? It's in Boise, right? There's 13 of 21 teams are in Boise, or 13 of 20 or whatever it is. They have the majority. So why would they change the system when it's benefiting them? The Boise's going to get the 2 at-large bids this year unless something really crazy happens. So why would they change it? Again, state of Ada, it all flows through Boise. It all benefits Boise. There's just not enough other 5A schools to outvote them.
So in the next 8 months, Post Falls is going to probably vote on a new high school. You'll see Post Falls split in the next 3 years. Coeur d'Alene's going to probably have to put one on the ballot sooner than later as well. Do all these teams go 4A? That's going to be the question in the future now. Is that you're going to see all these teams go down a classification because the rules favor geographically a split to go 4A with all these schools? It'd be interesting to see.
Yes, and I've heard rumblings in East Idaho. And again, these are just rumors and rumblings, but you know, you've got all these schools in Idaho Falls that are 4A, like Skyline, Hillcrest, Bonneville, that are constantly juggling between 5A, 4A, Idaho Falls. The goal, from what I've heard, is that they want all of those 4A Idaho Falls schools to be 5A. So there's a super conference in the East that can finally match what Boise's doing in the Treasure Valley. And again, so you're looking at 8 or 9 teams possibly.
That's a great podcast between football and basketball season, because then we can bring in my reclassification thing, and that would totally that would back that. It would actually support that.
Yes, but I agree. I mean, why continue to, if you're Coeur d'Alene, why continue to beat your head against the wall in a system that is set up to favor the Boise metro area? It's a problem. And it's just, I don't, short of changing your schedule to fit their criteria, I just don't know what the solution is. So anyways, it was an interesting conversation. Somebody is going to be out of the playoffs from up north. It's going to be a bummer. And spoiler alert, that's not the first time that's going to happen as we go through the different classifications here. So let's keep it rolling. 4A is pretty much set. Sandpoint is the district champ. Lakeland is going to get in as well. And so you were kind of asking me before we hopped on today, like, what does Sandpoint have to do to climb up in the Max Preps rankings? Right now, they'd be the 4 seed overall. Bishop Kelly's 1. I don't think that's changing. Skyline at 2 and Minico at 3 both have tough games on Friday night. And should they lose, then I think Sandpoint could move up.
Yeah, there's a realistic chance that Sandpoint could end up. I don't see them getting to the 2 line, but I certainly think they could get it. The 3 is, I think, realistic. But there's a lot to be said, with Shelley. They've got a winnable game, in my opinion. I think, Bonneville, do they stay on a roll? I mean, they're playing for, realistically now, playoff seeding, which is cool to say for the Bees to be there. And can they shock 2 teams 2 weeks in a row? I mean, there's something to be said about that program and what's going on there. I don't know if it happens, but that's certainly, I don't want to count them out by any means. I look at Lakeland and it's like, man, they're number 7 in the Max Preps rankings right now. And I understand seeding the champions. I get that part, like giving them the top 4 or 5 seeds or whatever. It's the next automatic qualifiers getting in. That's just based purely on an allotment. That doesn't make sense to seed them in the top 8 when you've got a team on the outside like Lakeland that could get seeded ahead of possibly 3 of those teams.
I thought the system last year was perfect.
Yeah.
Your 5 district champs are the top 5 seeds because winning your district has to count for something, I think.
Sure. Yeah.
And then you seed 6 through 16 based on Max Preps. This year they have convoluted it to the point where it is now, there's 8 auto bids, 8 at large bids. The 8 auto bids automatically get the top 8 seeds.
No, stop it.
But now, but not now, if you're a district champion, you're not guaranteed to get a top 5 seed. Like Pocatello will win District 5 and they'll be the 8 seed because they are the lowest Max Preps of the 8, auto bids. What was wrong with 5 district champs? 6 through 16 is based on Max Preps.
If you think that the district champ is weak, seed them at 5 and they're still going to play, we're going to see what a 5-11 matchup. They might get a win in that game. They might lose in that game if they get seeded correctly.
Right.
And we want the best 16 teams in, right? So like I get seeding the champions. I get that part. The seeding the top 8, according to Max Preps, that one doesn't make any sense to me at all. Because I look at, there's other teams that could have a beef about this too, that are on the outside looking, and not just Lakeland. But there's other teams out there. And then you have teams that are playing in just a notoriously weak conference. I mean, we're talking strength of schedule that wouldn't even be in the top 10 in 3A. And I don't want to throw darts at District 4, but I'm throwing darts at District 4. But you've got Minico that's doing everything. They're playing their schedule. Obviously, you look at Twin and Canyon Ridge is sitting there at 5-2, but their strength of schedule is like the bottom 4 in the state. So they could win realistically and still not make the playoffs.
And that is a very distinct possibility.
Yeah,
correct.
Yeah, so I mean, if I was on that team, I'd be ticked. Be like, dude, we had 2 losses on the year. We don't make the state playoffs, and a team with 2 wins gets in. Are you flipping kidding me? But at the same time, I'd say schedule better, do better, right? Like it's what we're saying for 5A too. Make it matter.
I think Lakeland is pretty much locked in where they're at. I just don't see how they're going to be able to leapfrog even any of the other, at large teams because of this Max Preps rating. Currently, Lakeland has the 2nd best, so they would be the 10 seed. Everybody loves Blackfoot. I'll tell you right now, I'm not impressed with Blackfoot. I'm not. They've had a tough strength of schedule because they played Highland and they played Skyline, and that District 6 is good. but they're getting this elevated boost. They're so inconsistent. I can't make heads or tails of Blackfoot. I just don't see how Lakeland's going to be able to surpass them. So Lakeland is the 10
Bonneville
seed.
beats them. It doesn't surprise me one bit.
But I don't know that that'll be enough to allow Lakeland to move past Blackfoot. So Lakeland's gone out and competed against all these 5A teams, and ultimately, what has it garnered them? The 10 seed. Oh, cool, great, thanks. So
you beat the 5A district champ, and in that game it wasn't the score is deceptive. Lakeland beat the doors off of them in that ball game, and that's just it's rough. I look at it and it's super. I don't know. Like I want to make beef about this. Why can't we do what we did last year? I thought we had a great tournament last year. I thought it was awesome and it was seeded how it should have been.
Yep. And so Lakeland, I don't know where Lakeland's going to go, but you can pretty much pencil them into the 10 seed. You can go ahead and mark that down. I think you can take that to the bank. 3A, let's talk about it. It's Bonners Ferry and Timberlake for the district title. Both teams are into the playoffs at this point. What's on the line, though, is a top 5 seed. And so I don't know. I still am not sure how this could go. I think the two teams are pretty evenly matched here, Ryan.
Bonners Ferry needs the marquee win. They're undefeated, but you look at who they've played to. They're like, that was what I meant to do before we came on, was tabulating the win-loss record of their opponents. I don't think they're even close to being 500. And that's not a knock to the Badgers because they played some good teams. I mean, they beat Kellogg, who's a good team. They're going to be competitive at 2A. But, so it's their first real test. I watched Timberlake take on South Fremont the first game of the year. I don't know what South Fremont's done since. I mean, I know that they're good, but I haven't watched any of their games since seeing them against Timberlake. And I know what I saw with the eye test. I saw two teams that were struggling to have an identity in the first game of the year, which doesn't surprise anybody. Timberlake, and I saw them against, Lakeland and get absolutely destroyed in that game. So, it's 3A is kind of, I like the Badgers. I think they're the most consistent. I think they've got the best quarterback play. They got the best running game. They have the best offensive line as far as in the North. I don't know what they're going to do come state. I mean, there's a lot of you got 3 really good teams at the top at 3A. And so, I mean, you look at Homedale, you look at Sugar, like those are my 2 picks right now. I mean, depending how, I don't know how it's going to get seeded. They could end up on the same side of the bracket for all we know, but I like the Badgers at least getting to. I think both teams are locked. They're in. You could pretty much put that thing in ink. Just who wins on Friday night. It's going to be interesting to see. The Badgers. Maybe can get a win. I don't know if they play. Ball control. They on a bad field. I would give them the edge.
Yeah, I also lean Bonners Ferry slightly. I saw Sugar Salem in person last Friday, Ryan. They're legit.
They're good.
They're real.
They're real.
I will say that. 2A, it's all settled up. Kellogg's your 1 seed, and St. Mary's, by winning that game over Grangeville 2 weeks ago, they're in. Even if they stub their toe, St. Mary's plays Orofino in their regular season finale. Even if they lost that match, at worst, they would be tied with Priest River and Grangeville at 2-2 in the league. And St. Mary's beat both those teams. So, and Orofino, even if they beat St. Mary's, would still be 3 in the loss column. So it's locked. St. Mary's is going.
Yeah.
That's awesome for Coach Craig Teft and his team, because they played a really tough schedule out of the gate. And they took them a long time to get that first win, but they're kind of building up a head of steam just in time for the playoffs.
Yeah. And let's go. I mean, we can go back and look at Kellogg. I mean, being the league champs, and, it's one of the quieter league champs. It's just one of those teams. I look at a couple of their losses and I'm scratching my head. Like, how do you get blanked in 2 of your losses this year with that offense? And they've got dudes. They got dudes on that team. I mean, you got the Luna brothers, and then you've got Varick Meredith, who's one of the best linebackers in the state, any classification. So, I mean, there's guys all over that field for Kellogg, but it's just scratching my head. Like, you can't have those type of losses that you had like against Deer Park and Bonners Ferry, coming back and expect to win a state championship. Like, West Side's too good. There's other teams out there that are too good. You can't have those moments.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I've kind of gone back and watched some of the film with Kellogg, and when they've struggled, there seems to be 2 common themes. There's like some dropped passes, and there's penalties.
Yeah.
Penalties have been a big problem for Kellogg this year. And you're right. When you get deep into the playoffs and you're playing Declo, Westside, Firth, Bear Lake, whatever it is, they are all.
If you're not disciplined, you're going to be in a hole.
Yeah, and they're all ball control teams. So the number of possessions that you're going to have is so limited. You're going to have maybe in some games you might have 4 offensive possessions. Yeah. And if you don't score all 4 times, you may have just lost 28-21. I'm serious though.
And you've got kids on their team like Colby Luna's got, I think he's number 3 in the nation in yards by a wide receiver. Like his yards per catch is number 2 in the country. Like this isn't just. I mean, I don't care what level you're playing. That's insane to have those type of numbers.
Yeah.
You're too good to have an issue to where you go undisciplined and you shoot yourself in the foot and put yourself, and we talked about it Post Falls that if they're going to struggle, those teams that run the fast pace, no huddle, Lewiston, Post Falls, Kellogg, those type of offenses, if you find yourself 3rd and 15, 2nd and 20, those type of situations, you're digging yourself in a big hole because you're going to end up finding yourself going 3-4 and out on 5 plays because you had a penalty on first down. It's just, you don't want to put yourself in a hole that way, especially a team that's not going to give you the ball back.
Yeah. And if I'm a team from East Idaho and I have one of these teams you mentioned, coming to play us in the playoffs, I'm keeping that game outside. I'm not going inside Holt Arena. I'm going to make Kellogg throw the ball around in, 30-degree weather. Yeah.
Lewiston, I think, is the only one of those teams I look. Well, Lewiston Post Falls runs the ball really well too. So neither of those teams on bad field conditions necessarily scare me too much. Kellogg's the one that I would not want to see inside or on a fast track. Absolutely not.
This famously happened last year in the semifinals where Lapway, and we'll talk about Lapway coming up. Lapway was playing Raft River in the semifinals, and Lapway had that explosive offense with Titus Year out leading the way. And Raft River said, "We could go to Holt Arena, but we're gonna make you guys come here instead and play outdoors." And that it worked out well for Raft River. They got the win. They neutralized Lapway's explosive offense, and so I think that where Kellogg plays is going to be interesting if they get that far down the line. So again, we'll keep an eye on it for sure. 1A D1, let's talk about it. Kamei is the district champs in the White Pine. Clearwater Valley is officially 2nd place.
Yep.
They had a crazy game with Prairie on Friday night where 10 seconds to play, Clearwater Valley gets the game-winning touchdown on a 5-yard pass from Louis Fabi to Carson Schilling. This was Prairie back at full strength, and they just unfortunately suffered some injuries at the wrong time, and because of that, they're pretty much out. So here's what I found out talking to people in the White Pine League is that Lapway basically owns all the tiebreakers. It doesn't matter who they're tied with. It doesn't matter how many teams are tied for that 3rd and final playoff spot. Lapway wins the tiebreakers. The only way Lapway doesn't get in is if they lose to Genesee and Prairie or Potlatch or somebody else wins their respective game. That's the schedule. That's where we're at with that. So what's going to be interesting is that Prairie plays Logos on Friday. Potlatch plays Kamei on Friday. Potlatch would need a win plus a Prairie and a Lapway loss to get that 3rd spot. Prairie would need a win and a Lapway loss. So you could have those 2 teams win on Friday night. Lapway doesn't play till Saturday at 1. So we might all just be sitting back waiting to see what happens here.
And that Lapway team, I mean, we talked about it last year with, dynamic playmakers, and you've got another one in Terrell Ellenwood Jones that's putting up like video game type numbers in his games for the Wildcats. And, it'll be, I like Lapway in that game. I think Lapway is a dangerous team to face in the playoffs too. I think with the playmakers they've got around, Ellenwood Jones, and you've got another year out on the team with Elias that's just lighting things up too, and a defense that's finding their stride that gets takeaways. That's a team definitely I would not want to play, especially if you play a dynamic. The teams that give Lapway fits are the ones that run the ball extremely hard, keep it on the ground and control. That's where you can make hay against Wildcats. If you try to out athlete Lapway, you're not going to get them.
Yeah, I would not want to play Lapway. They are played so well right now. Yeah. They've kind of got it figured out. D2, Kendrick plays another Tico Rosalia, gets called off in the second quarter. I think Kendrick's played 3 Washington teams, and I think combined the total time maybe equals 1 full game. Maybe, I don't know.
Maybe. And they've scored like total of 180 some points or something. It's like 200 points in those games. So yeah, it's crazy.
Anyways, we beat that dead horse last week. Kendrick has won the conference. They get a first round bye. They'll get a home game for the quarterfinal round. They will play, if we think the bracket shakes out the way it's going to, they're going to play either Camas County or Water Springs. I like Kendrick there, certainly. Clark Fork officially clinched second place with a pretty big win over Wallace on Friday night. Yep. Wampus Cats get a home play. Skaggs, we might be sending you up to Clark Fork for the first round of the playoff. I'm not joking.
Yeah, that's awesome.
We can go there and do video coverage. So
yeah, I'm sure they would love to have us too. They would treat us like royalty rolling into town. So yeah, no, I'm all for the Wampus Cats. That's awesome for them to get a home playoff win. That's fantastic for that program.
Yeah, and
just hats off to that team for just being. I mean, you talk about a rough road the last few years, and being close. It's like kind of the bridesmaid, but never the bride. And they show up and take care of business. And the Wampus Cats playoff team. I mean, playoff bound. That's awesome. They don't really hear that too often, and that's awesome. Yeah, I'm stoked for North Idaho football right now as far as the 8-man level.
Yeah, and that matchup is already set. Clark Fork will host Castleford, which is it's a tough matchup for sure.
Yeah,
Castleford was a Final Four team last year, but good luck. And Mullen St. Regis won the district. Of course, they get a first round bye. They will play likely the winner of Garden Valley and whoever gets second place from District 2. That's really the only game that's intriguing is Lewis County is going to host Timberline of Weippe on Friday. Winner of that will get second place in the district and the second auto bid. The more I'm looking at this, early on in the season, I said Lewis County. I really like Lewis County. Ty Hambley, their star quarterback, has been out the last several games with an injury, and Timberline kind of quietly went through an injury spell of their own middle of the season, and they've kind of gotten their guys back. So I'm actually kind of leaning Timberline in this matchup.
I'm still gonna stick with Lewis County. I think you look at is the sum greater than of its parts, and I look at. Yeah, Ty Hambley's great. He's a great player. If he's back, I think if he's back at half strength or 70%, I think Lewis County has just got too many other guys on that lineup to beat. But I'm going to go opposite you on that pick this week and go with Lewis County and take him. I think that their record shows where they're at for a reason, and they've been still able to play without Ty and still get some wins. So we'll go the route of Lewis County.
Yeah, they really have leaned on Gage Crow a little more in the run game. And, of course, Ryland West is such a great running back for Timberline. Could be a fun game. Timberline looking for their third consecutive playoff appearance, which would be really exciting for a team that they didn't even have a varsity program.
I'm going to have some family members of mine that probably miffed at me picking Lewis County over Timberline since I've got family from up at Weippe on the prairie up there. So, yeah.
Hey. How business and family, it's
I know.
Anyways, yeah. So but whoever wins that game gets a home playoff game as well. So maybe we'll send you to Weippe.
Send me to Weippe. I'll take my rifle if I'm going all the way up there. That's not for the crowd. That's just because hunting's too good up there.
Right. But
yeah, no, it's that's not an easy trip for anybody coming across the state either to find your way up to Weippe. That's out of the way if you live in Lewiston. So that's, we're talking the ultimate home field advantage, I think, if you're going to be playing up in Weippe.
Yeah.
And technically it's not even in Weippe. It's between Weippe and Pierce. It's like halfway between each town.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's on Highway 11. I think it's like probably 5 or 6 miles north of Weippe, if I'm not mistaken. So, yeah.
The closest I've been to Weippe is the sign that says Weippe 11 miles in Orofino.
Yeah.
or
bottom of the bottom of the Greer grade. Yeah. No. That's,
however far that is. But yeah, Orofino is the closest I've been to Weippe, if that makes sense.
It's a beautiful area up there. It's gorgeous. But yeah.
Yeah. For sure. All right. Well, that's we've gone long as always. I promise these will get shorter as we get less games to talk about, but good luck to the teams up north. It's a bummer that we're not going to see more of them in the state playoffs for football, but for the ones that do make it, I think they've got chances. They've all got really good chances to go deep, and certainly, Kendrick at the very top, I think.
And just to prep some things, I'm not going to show many names on here. I'm going to hold it far enough away so nobody can see their name. I've already compiled my list for all North Idaho football, so we'll have something to talk about in the next couple of weeks too. And I look at that team, and holy smokes, there are some dudes on that team. So yeah, we'll talk about them for weeks to come. But yeah.
Yeah, that's going to be so much fun at the end of the year when you unveil your all North Idaho team. It's going to be so much fun.
Yeah.
We'll get there. For now, we're just trying to get to the playoffs. So good luck to
playoffs.
Yeah, don't talk about playoffs.
Jim Mora. Playoffs.
Oh man. He had another really good quote from back in the day. We played like diddly poo. We couldn't.
The guy with the quote machine. Him and Dennis Green. But yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So anyways, playoffs. Yes, we'll be talking playoffs next week on the North Idaho Prepcast. So
we will have brackets next week.
That's right.
First brackets round matchups. I'm stoked for it. So
brackets Baney will officially be back to
break
it all down.
Gonna get that green visor on.
Yeah. Right. Yes. For sure. Hey, that reminds me real quick. Friday night, all you fans in North Idaho from 9:30 to 10:30 Pacific time, we are going to be doing a live Twitter Spaces.
That was fun.
That was a lot of fun.
We killed it when we started talking soccer, though.
Beep, beep, beep.
Yeah, it was like we flatlined it. We went from like 14 people to 3 real quick.
I think the fact that it was 12:30 at night also had something to do with that.
Yeah,
but okay, so Friday night on the IdahoSports.com Twitter account, we're gonna have a Twitter Spaces from 9:30 to 10:30 Pacific time where we're breaking it down. You're gonna get our raw, real reactions to what happened. We're gonna have all the IdahoSports.com broadcasters on. I'll be there talking about, okay, here's what the bracket looks like. Here's where this team's gonna go. It's gonna be a lot of fun. You can, if you have a Twitter account, you can participate. You can ask questions. You can, if you were at a game that we weren't, you can give your analysis. If you don't have a Twitter account, that's okay. You can still listen. You don't have to have a Twitter account to listen to the conversation. So I want everybody there Friday night on Twitter, the IdahoSports.com Twitter account for our Twitter Spaces. Again, 9:30 to 10:30 Friday night Pacific time. So yeah, going to be a lot of fun for sure.
Yeah, that's going to be awesome. I'm stoked, and I'm looking forward to being a more of a patron this week than a broadcaster. So yeah. I'll be listening and watching the Lewis and Coeur d'Alene game from my boat while I'm steelhead fishing. So
sounds like a great way to spend a Friday night for sure. So yeah, we'll see you all Friday night and next week as well, right here on the North Idaho Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.